Going down, y'all Rooster McNuggets, and this here is the quickening that we're experiencing. Y'all ever heard this? The rapture, the quickening, the blink of an eye. These things will be caught up in the sky with Christ, and it'll be unveiled, and reality will make sense. You know, like that's what's happening today. He said in the last days it'll be like a woman giving birth. She'll be moaning and groaning, and you know how they go through cycles of labor. You know, the contractions get closer and closer, and it's not a fun experience for the mother. But what is processing is bringing forth something new, and that's what he was referring to. He says, don't go looking here or over there if they say the Christ be there, you know, because it'll be like the lightning that shineth from the east to the west. It'll be like that. You won't have to look for it. It'll be obvious, you know. And if it's not obvious, because you haven't seen it, you know. But it's not amazing that we wouldn't see these things. It's been covered. A lot of this stuff has been denigrated so that the masses stay in a low frequency. And I used to trip on that terminology, low frequency. It seemed so, how the fuck does that connect to anything? You know, but basically, not to get too off track, we get stuck in our lower nature, in the trying to provide for ourselves type mentality. Survival mentality is a frequency, because it's a pattern of lifestyle. It's a way in which we approach life on a regular basis. So that's why it's a frequency. You know, it ends up being a form. And it is a vibration in of itself, because it's an attitude, right? So I used to trip on that, like how is that even all connected, right? And so, well, to tie it back into what I am talking about as far as the resurrection, as far as the rapture, the quickening, this is the lifting of our understanding of who we are, the revelation, the revealing of the Christ within. You know, he said, are you the same way that I leave, I shall come back in the clouds. And the clouds was a sign of judgment in those times. And so that's how truth is revealed in the judgment day, you know. So if Christ is always being revealed as the reality, but we can only see it when we frame out our own worldview. When we say, so especially if we're coming from the perspective of being a subjective person, if we think that we're carnal, we think that we're finite, we have a limited perspective, right? And we don't believe in God, right? Well, why can't we define that out then, and say, well, this is what my perspective is? It's the thing is that we once we try, there's always more to be revealed, right? And so we can go down certain paths to basically justify any path that we choose. But regardless of what path we choose, there's always another question. It's never complete, right? And that in and of itself is a pointer, if not a fact, of God, you know. So it's so this is when it was said, like when Paul ate the book, right? That was given to him, not Paul, it was John, ate the book in Revelation. You know, he said that it was sweet to the taste, but it was bitter to his stomach, right? There's a saying that goes, when we are given something, a true knowledge, something that will liberate us, how does it say? He says, it's something that will initially trouble us, right? That's how it's in our stomach, and then it'll amaze us, because because it troubles us, because it goes against everything we've been taught up to that point. But then when we interpret it for ourselves, and not when it's told to us, these are like koans for Buddhists. Buddhism is like, it's like you have to get it. If I tell you the punchline, you missed it, you know. So they just kind of set the scene, and it's up to us once we take those things and we wrestle with them, like who was it that wrestled with the angel? Jacob wrestling with the angel, and he said, I'm not going to let you go until I get my salvation. You know, that's till I see what my nature is, what is actually going on here. I'm not going to let go of this until I find out where it actually leads. What is happening? What is this? And so and he was awarded that. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it will be opened. You know, so framing this out is the beginning of death. And that's why most of us avoid it, because it's a path of humility. You know, we have to basically draw out what we don't know. Because if we try to talk about what we know, we'll be just rambling on and on and on, or just, you know, try to build a concept. But what we find out is that all these concepts tie into other concepts. And so now you're in the parable of the tares, you know, and all these things are growing together, right? So he says that in the day of the harvest that they'll just throw the weeds, the fucked up concepts that don't work will be tossed into the fire. And there they will be, and that's right where we find the Antichrist. That's right where we find the dragon, and is in the fire, in the bottomless pit, because it is that's perceived chaos from subjective perspective that is the handmaiden of order. You know, we so when we're first setting out on our spiritual journey, we first have to fall away until we start to say God is the problem. There is no God. Because if there was a God, then this shit wouldn't happen, and that shit wouldn't happen, and that shit wouldn't happen. That's us pointing at the chaos, you know, the death, right? But then we realize later on, as we continue down this path, if we stay open and move in a path, even if that's what we believe, that's fine, we follow that, then we move into these patterns of death, and we realize what they actually are through going through it. Because, well, that's when I was introduced to Shiva, you know, and Kali, you know, Kali Ma. So the death and destruction, or Satan, or however you want to put it, actually was just like I said, it's a handmaiden of God. It's the servant, but we don't like where it's coming from. So that's why we paint it in that color. You know, it's death and destruction, but it's death and destruction to what we're holding on to. But what we're holding on to is partial. And so that's why we feel the separation. And so what we're looking for is union. That's the path of the yogi. That's what yoga means. So reunion is the same thing as the wedding in the Christian tradition. You know, the Last Supper, the city coming down out of Jerusalem. I mean, out of the sky, the city of God coming out of the sky. You know, the bridesmaid. You know, this is so it's a one, and then it became a two. We saw separation, and then as we traced out that line between 1 and 2, we saw that it was connected, and that's when the 3 emerged. And so in the 3, there's another reunion. There's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There's the Trinity, that all things come out of, the data, algorithm, and information. The point being that in order to have anything exist in a material form, it has to have three components to it, because they relate to each other as a system, as an integrated system. And so these are the principles of eternity in action, because it starts from source, which is full potential. And so when we let go of our limited view of self, then we are caught up. We are reunited with reality, and all that we see here in time and throughout our experience is how do I say that? An outgrowth of eternity. So we experience it in a sequential way, but it's more akin to a fountain. That's why it says my cup overfloweth. It's more akin to an eternal fountain springing up from seemingly nowhere, and cycling back into itself. That is the human portal of what we are, and that is, we see the outer casing, and our culture has taught us that's what we are, to focus on that. But that's just one portion of the three, as it were. So how the micro represents the micro, how little man represents the big man, and we're created in his image, is that we have mind, speech, and action, or mind, emotions, and action. So analytical, emotional, and then a meeting of the twain, which is the body. And so that's why we see the body at the intersection of the cross, because that is where all these things meet, just like at the horizon, so yeah. And then you could even talk about quantum mechanics from there, as the cross splits it into four, and then we start to talk about probabilities from potential. And now we're starting to talk about what Christ was getting at, and the kingdom is within you. But a lot of that knowledge has been pulled out from the masses so that a few could utilize the information to hold power over people. So that's the dark arts, that's the false church, the false light, right? And it's just another recycling of the same story of the bigger and smaller, as above, so below. But that's continuing to go on. So that's why I'm looking at all these issues a slight bit differently. As we've come into all these problems and these things start to coalesce, we are seeing the birth of Christ, because we are coming to reality, and so that is the rapture, that is the quickening, that is the resurrection, and so, well, it's good to be I'm part of the resurrection with y'all, and anybody can join this at any time. He said we just lay down our gifts, realizing that that's because they were given to us. Why wouldn't we? So that means just walk in truth, whatever your truth is, and it will open up from there. Love y'all.